pound of beef now costs as much as a pair of sneakers. A small apartment now costs a lifetime of savings. And something strange is happening across America. The middle class, the group that once defined stability, is quietly disappearing into vans. Call it digital nomadism, call it minimalist living. But behind those Instagram sunsets is the real story. Families boiling instant noodles in church parking lots. Veterans folding blankets in the back of a pickup. Fathers charging phones at Starbucks just so they can apply for online jobs. They aren't lazy, they aren't addicted, they aren't lost. They're just priced out of an address. And while you're still paying off your house, just remember, one medical bill, one layoff, or one rent increase, and you could be parking next to them. Today, we're diving into why living in a car is becoming the new American housing plan and what it reveals about the silent collapse of the middle class. Because if you think this won't be you, give it 3 years. Rent in America has stopped being a bill and has become a weapon. Today, you don't need to lose your job to become homeless. You just need your landlord to raise the rent. In the last 5 years, rents in many states have jumped more than 40%. Wages? They barely moved. It's like watching a tortoise race a rocket. In states like California, Florida, and New York, a worker needs to put in 133 hours a week just to afford a simple 2-bedroom apartment. That's 19 hours a day. No life, barely survival. A tiny studio with peeling paint now costs the same as a used pickup truck. And people choose the truck because at least the truck moves. Everyone knows the reasons. Not enough affordable housing. Investors buying whole neighborhoods. Interest rates declining. Property taxes exploding. But here's the part no one wants to hear. The system is working exactly the way it was built. Orderly on the outside. Crushing on the inside. Picture a family earning $4,000 a month. Rent takes $2,600. That leaves $1,400 for everything else. Gas, food, insurance, medicine, school. One flat tire, one doctor visit, one $20 spike in the electric bill, and the whole world collapses. And this is why safe parking lots are appearing everywhere, from Seattle to San Diego. Not for the jobless, but for the working middle class. Teachers, nurses, bank tellers, people who pay taxes and still can't afford an address. In America today, millions aren't losing homes because they're irresponsible. Here's the new reality in America. You can work full-time and still sleep in your car. Every night across this country, you'll find scenes that simply shouldn't exist in a wealthy nation. A nurse in full uniform, reclining in the front seat of an old Honda. An Amazon warehouse worker waking up in a van before sunrise. An Uber driver folding his blanket at 5 a.m., trying to look normal before his first ride. These people aren't jobless. They aren't lazy. They aren't broken. They're working harder than ever and still losing ground. According to federal data, 40% of America's homeless population is employed full-time or part-time. Think about that for a moment. We've reached a point where having a job no longer guarantees having an address. Let's do the math. 2 full-time jobs, 80 hours a week. After taxes, maybe $3,000, $3,500 a month. In Los Angeles, the average rent alone is $2,700. Gas, food, insurance, medicine, all gone. The car becomes the last thing left, a vehicle, and now a home. But if you listen to politicians, they'll still tell you, people just don't want to work. Tell that to the guy brushing his teeth with bottled water behind a Walmart. Tell that to the woman changing into scrubs in the parking lot before her shift. Tell that to the worker who pays taxes while sleeping in the same car that takes him to work every day. This isn't a story about laziness. It's a story about wages too low and a cost of living too high. And it's turning the working class into the parking lot class. If you really want to understand the American middle class, don't look at their income. Look at their debt. Because here's the truth. Most Americans aren't poor. They just haven't finished paying for everything they've already bought. Student loans, car loans, credit cards, medical bills, personal loans, Buy now, pay later for groceries. Debt isn't a tool anymore. It's a lifestyle, a religion, and interest is the weekly offering. Right now, America's credit card debt has passed $1.14 trillion, the highest level in U.S. history. And 60% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved for an emergency. That means one broken bone, one blown tire, one unexpected bill, and you're officially living on the financial edge. Most people don't realize this, but the average American will spend 8 years of their life paying interest alone. 8 years. That's a college degree. That's a childhood. That's enough time to travel the entire country if you were drowning in monthly payments. I met a man in San Diego who explained it perfectly. He said, "I used to have a house, 2 cars, and a 780 credit score. Now I have a van, a folding mattress, and a credit score colder than December." He wasn't joking. He wasn't exaggerating. He was exhausted. This is the part no one teaches in school. They don't teach how compound interest works. They don't teach how debt traps you. Instead, Americans learn the hard way by paying real interest month after month. Debt has become the unofficial engine of the middle class. You borrow to live, then work to repay, then borrow again to survive. It's a loop, a treadmill, a cage disguised as financial opportunity. And when the credit cards max out, when the loans pile up, people don't stop spending. They stop living indoors. That's how the middle class finds its way into a parking lot, not through failure, but through finance. Open Instagram, and you'll see it everywhere. A shiny van parked by the ocean, a perfect sunrise, a girl sipping coffee while her dog looks out at the waves. Soft music, warm lighting, freedom. That's the fantasy. But here's the reality. 1,000 vans lined up in a Walmart parking lot, neon lights buzzing overhead, people sleeping with one eye open, in the exact same kind of vans you see in those dreamy posts. Since 2020, van life has exploded online. Millions of people are posting about minimalist freedom, living off-grid, and escaping the system. And at the same time, the number of Americans forced to live in vehicles has risen by more than 60%. Same vans, same hashtags, completely different lives. In Los Angeles alone, 13,000 vehicles are now used as homes. Not for adventurers, not for influencers, but for people who simply ran out of options. 2 Americas exist inside the same parking space. One side calls it a lifestyle. The other calls it a lifeline. One lives in a van by choice. The other lives in a van because everything else is gone. A woman who used to be an accountant told me her story. After the pandemic, she lost her job. She bought an old minivan, built a homemade bed, a tiny stove, a plastic drawer for clothes. At first, she called it freedom, a fresh start, a chance to travel and reset. But months later, her voice changed. She said, "What kind of freedom is it when every night I have to choose between gas or dinner?" That's the part social media never shows. The fear, the hunger, the silence, the exhaustion. Van life has become 2 sides of the same coin. One side is romantic, the other side is tragic. And the middle class? They're staring at both sides, because they're not sure which side they'll land on next. Across this great West Coast, something quite unbelievable is happening. Parking lots are replacing neighborhoods. They're called safe parking sites. On paper, they're temporary shelters. In reality, they're becoming America's newest housing system. You'll find them in Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Los Angeles, church parking lots, university lots, empty fields with cones and floodlights. But here's the twist. The government, you see, doesn't run most of them. They're run by churches, run by charities, run by small groups of tireless volunteers who simply got tired of waiting for the state to form a committee. People are building their own bathrooms, their own charging stations, their own night watches, their own rules. And then, the city, it shuts them down. Why, you ask? Zoning issues, too close to residential areas, not permitted. Imagine that, if you will. People finally help themselves, and the system, it says, they're doing it in the wrong place. Meanwhile, the very same officials who shut these lots down hold press conferences declaring, "We must find solutions to homelessness." A man living in one of these lots, he told me, "I don't want free money. I just want the government to stop punishing me for trying to survive." That sentence, it stays with you, because it exposes the whole dark comedy of the system. The homeless need permission to be homeless. Even poverty, my friends, has business hours. You must enter before 9 p.m. Leave by 7 a.m. No loud music, no idling your engine, no looking like you actually live there. In the land of the free, even the poor need a permit. And while communities try to help, some residents fight back. "I'm not prejudiced," they say, "but they'll park next to my house." That's conditional kindness. Support as long as it stays out of sight. So the country ends up in a strange tug-of-war. The homeless are pushed away, the middle class fears being next, and the government stands in the middle, looking like it's doing something, while doing almost nothing. This isn't a housing crisis anymore. It's a crisis of responsibility, a crisis of leadership, a crisis where parking lots are becoming the last line of defense. And it raises a chilling question. If parking lots are today's shelter, what will tomorrow look like? For millions of Americans, the car isn't just transportation anymore. It's the last piece of dignity they have left. In safe parking lots across California, you'll see it. Clean clothes, washed cars, people still showing up to work on time, even though they sleep in the driver's seat. Because in America, losing your home means losing everything. Your address, your job, your insurance, even your identity. So the car becomes the final boundary between holding on and falling apart. A locked door, a little privacy, a tiny space where life still feels like yours. A veteran in Santa Barbara said it best. "At least in this car, I can still lock the doors." That line says everything. The vehicle that once took people to work is now the only home they can afford. Not out of choice, but because the system gives them nowhere else to go. And if the middle class is sleeping in cars, you have to wonder, who's still living in the houses? If current trends continue, living in a car won't be a crisis by 2035. It'll be normal. Picture this. A giant parking lot glowing with LED lights. Rows of vans lined up like apartment buildings. A premium section with solar power, and an economy section next to the gas station. People watching Netflix, people charging laptops, people doing Zoom calls from the back of a minivan. It won't be called homelessness anymore. It'll be called mobile living communities, housing as a service. And companies will package it into monthly subscription plans like it's some new lifestyle upgrade. Politicians will brag, "We solved homelessness." They just won't mention the part where everyone is sleeping in a parking lot. At this rate, van residency could become America's third largest housing model in the next decade. Not a solution, a warning. Because when a society normalizes living in cars, it tells you everything about the collapse happening underneath.